I walked into his office expecting a modeling contract, something clean and straightforward, the kind of job that finally puts your name somewhere noticeable. Instead, he barely looked up from his desk before saying, "I want you to be my girlfriend." Like it was the most normal request in the world. I actually laughed at first, thinking I'd misheard him. "Sorry, what?" He set his pen down then, finally giving me his full attention. "You'll accompany me to certain events, public appearances, social functions. You act as my partner." I leaned back slightly, studying him, trying to figure out if this was some kind of test or a joke that hadn't landed. "You do realize I'm male, right?" "I'm aware." There was no reaction, no hesitation, just a calm, almost dismissive certainty that made it hard to push back. "Then why not just hire an actual girlfriend?" I asked. "Or an actress who already fits the role?" "I don't like women," he said plainly, "and I don't like unnecessary attention. They bring both." I couldn't help the small smile that slipped out. "And you think I won't?" "I think you understand performance," he replied, his gaze settling on me properly now. "And more importantly, you won't forget that it is a performance." That line lingered a little longer than I expected. "So this is control," I said slowly. "Yes." "And I'm convenient." "You're convincing," he corrected, almost lazily. "There's a difference." I exhaled, shaking my head slightly. "This is insane." "Probably," he agreed. Then he reached for his checkbook, wrote something down without even asking another question, and slid it across the table toward me. "But you're still considering it." I didn't touch it straight away, but I didn't push it back either. "What exactly would I have to do?" "Be present. Stay close. Let people see what they need to see." He paused, just briefly. "Nothing more than you're comfortable with." That last part felt almost like a lie, but not quite. I picked up the check. "When do we start?" A few days later, I was sitting in front of a mirror while his assistant worked on me with the kind of quiet confidence that made everything feel inevitable. "You're overthinking," she said without looking at me. "I haven't said anything." "You don't need to." I let out a small breath and watched as she adjusted the angle of my chin. "Do people usually agree to this so easily?" "Not usually," she said, brushing foundation evenly across my skin. "But you're not usually the type he chooses." That doesn't sound reassuring. It's not meant to be. I huffed quietly, but didn't move. There was something oddly grounding about the way she worked. Every motion deliberate, every detail controlled. When she moved to my eyes, I caught the change more clearly. My expression shifted without me doing anything, softer in a way that felt unfamiliar, but not wrong. "That's strange," I murmured. "What is?" "It still looks like me." She smiled slightly. "It should." When she placed the wig, adjusting it carefully around my face, I finally understood what she meant. Nothing about this was hiding who I was. It was just reframing it. "Stand," she said. I did, but this time, I felt it before I even looked. The structure underneath held everything in place. The corset pulled my waist in just enough to force my posture upright, changing the way I stood without effort. Every breath felt slightly controlled, like my body had been guided into a new shape. The weight on my chest settled naturally. The breast forms balanced in a way that didn't feel exaggerated, just enough to create a soft curve that the dress followed perfectly. When I shifted, even slightly, I could feel them move with me, realistic enough that my body reacted instinctively. Lower down, the hip pads completed it. Subtle, but when I turned slightly toward the mirror, the difference was undeniable. My silhouette flowed differently now, waist narrowing into a gentle curve that softened into my hips, giving everything a balance that didn't feel forced. Then the dress. white, strapless, clean. It sat perfectly across my chest, holding everything in place, the fabric smooth as it traced down along my body. It hugged lightly at the waist, then followed the curve of my hips before ending just above my knees, exposing just enough. I glanced down. My legs looked longer, not because they were, but because of how everything came together. The heels lifted my posture, changing the way my weight rested, forcing my steps into something slower, more deliberate. My calves tightened slightly as I adjusted, the line from thigh to knee clean and defined. I took a step. Too fast. Too fast, she said. You're thinking about walking. Don't. That's not helpful. Try again. I slowed down, letting my weight settle before moving again. Step. Then another. The sound changed, sharper, cleaner. Click, click. There, she said softly. I lifted my hand without thinking. The nails caught the light, glossy, shaped, delicate. Even that felt different. I looked at the mirror again. This time, I didn't hesitate. Okay, I admitted quietly. He was waiting outside when I stepped out. This time, when he looked up, he didn't hide the pause. Not surprise, assessment. His eyes moved once, slowly, taking in everything. The hair framing my face, the softness in my expression, the way the dress sat against my body, the way I stood in those heels. There was a pause, just long enough to feel it. Good, he said simply. That's it? I raised a brow slightly. No, you look nice or anything? I didn't hire you to be complimented, he replied, already turning. I hired you to be effective. I rolled my eyes lightly, but followed him anyway. Charming. You'll manage. The event was already busy when we arrived, the kind of place where everyone looked like they belonged and spent most of their time noticing who didn't. I felt the shift almost immediately as we walked in together, eyes lingering, conversations dipping just enough to signal interest. Without thinking too much about it, I moved closer and slipped my arm around his. He didn't react, but I felt the slight adjustment in his posture, like he expected it. Relax, he murmured under his breath. You're stiff. I'm in heels, I muttered back. You agreed to that. I agreed to the job. The heels were not clearly specified. That almost got a reaction, a faint hint of amusement, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. Stay close, he said instead. I am close. Closer. I shot him a look, but adjusted anyway, letting my body align more naturally with his. It worked immediately. The attention shifted, not curiosity anymore, but something quieter, more certain. See? He said softly. Annoyingly, yes. We moved through the room like that for a while, and I started to notice the difference. People weren't questioning anymore. They were observing, accepting. Then he stopped. I nearly walked into him. What? Kiss me. I blinked. You're not even going to ease into that? They're watching, he said calmly. I glanced around. He wasn't wrong. You're enjoying this a little too much. I'm solving a problem. With my face. With your presence. I hesitated just long enough to feel my heartbeat pick up, then stepped closer anyway. If I mess this up, I'm blaming you. You won't. The confidence in his voice was almost irritating. I placed a hand lightly against him, more for balance than anything, and leaned in slowly. It wasn't rushed, wasn't exaggerated, just enough to make it real. When I pulled back, I didn't move away. There, I murmured quietly. His grip on my hand tightened slightly. Perfect. And just like that, the room changed. No more whispers, No more questions. Only quiet acceptance. I exhaled slowly, glancing around. That actually worked. I told you it would. I tilted my head slightly, studying him now. You sound very sure of me for someone who barely knows me. He looked at me then, not past me, not through me, but at me. I knew the moment you walked in. That made my chest tighten, just a little. Knew what? A brief pause. That you'd be convincing. I held his gaze for a second longer than necessary, then looked away, adjusting my grip on his arm like nothing had changed. Careful, I said lightly. You almost sound like you're impressed. I don't get impressed easily. But? His expression didn't shift. But you're doing exactly what I expected. I smiled faintly. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed quietly. It's not.